to call and support us right now at 888-287-0655. That's 888-287-0655. We need to keep those volunteers busy. It's not good to just sit around and not have anything to do. We want to put them to work. That's what I say.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm watching them through the window. They can't hear me, unfortunately. Otherwise, we'd have more fun.
Yeah.
Is that the phone ringing?
It was the phone ringing.
It is. Thank you so much to that caller for making that phone ring. They're springing into action now. 888-287-0655. While we were at break, we did get an online donation, and it was it's an apostle level donation.
Woohoo!
So thank you
have
so
one of
much
your
for
sound
that.
bits?
I'm gonna try one of my sound bits and see if it works. You won't be able to hear it out here, guys. But
Okay. All right. Well, while you got it? Okay. Good. Wonderful. We're excited when we get apostles.
Yep, absolutely.
That's $1,000.
That's $1,000.
I mean, all contributions are helpful. All contributions are significant. All contributions are greatly appreciated. But when we get 12 apostles or more, we know there's a certain amount in the bank, so to speak, to be able to explore some of the other opportunities, like we've been talking about all week, about expanding the signal into Fostoria as well as Van Wert to cover more of the listening area of Northwest Ohio. But we need your help. We cannot do it without you. This station is 100% listener supported, so we need you to give us a call at 888-287-0655. You can also donate online at holyfamilyradio.fm in the Holy Family Radio app, or by texting GIVE to 419-969-3255. So we are here in studio with our first in-studio guests of the day, and we're really excited to welcome them, but we do want to give a disclaimer first. We're going to be talking about adult issues, and it may not be appropriate for younger ears. So parents or grandparents, if you have children in the listening area, be forewarned that we're going to be discussing topics of fertility and such. So make your decision accordingly. So we're happy to welcome in studio 3 guests with us here today. We have Wendy M. She's a nurse by trade, but she's also the foundress. Is that a good term? Okay, the foundress of the Divine Grace Fertility Care Center. Is that correct? All right.
Thank you.
And I said a nurse by trade, and Wendy is certified in fertility care as well. So we're going to hear a lot about her clinic. We basically said, right? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So and then we have a couple other guests, but I'm going to introduce them in a couple of minutes here. So Wendy, why don't you tell us how you got involved in fertility care? Why you decided to do it, and how you got things off the ground.
Thank you for having me. This is great. It was a journey, so I'll try to keep this story short. But just to be very blunt, I had issues with my cycles ever since I was a teenager, and that continued into college and as a young woman. And I was never really had a lot of options for what to do about the irregularities, except for the birth control pill was my only option that was given to me when I was younger. And thankfully, 2 wonderful parents, which I didn't think at the time were wonderful when they said no to that option. I thank them now for that. But it was one of those things that it was just a frustrating thing to deal with. And it led into an infertility diagnosis when I was married. Years of struggling to conceive, to understand my cycles, which led to a lot of stress in our marriage. I remember attending our pre-Cana day as we were preparing for marriage, and the couple courageously going up and talking about NFP, natural family planning, and saying to do that, of which my husband and I wanted to welcome that into our marriage. But even that was the method they talked about, said it was very difficult to use when I was a night shift nurse, so my sleep schedule was always different, and with my irregular cycles. So that also led to a lot of frustrations, which, to be honest, it led me to a point of being frustrated with the medical community and then frustrated in my Catholic faith as well, because I didn't feel like I was getting support or answers from either side. And I was very strong in my faith, and I loved my job as a nurse. And in medicine, we're always trying to figure out what's wrong with the person, and then looking at imaging, labs, all of those things to determine a diagnosis in order to properly treat the person. But with women's health and my fertility, it was never that option. They never looked into what the problem was as to why I was having irregularity and why I was infertile.
Even, let me interrupt you there to ask, even your regular OBGYN, like not necessarily somebody trained in the Creighton model or NAPRO, but even your regular OBGYN didn't seem interested in trying to diagnose what the problem was?
Unfortunately, no. And I went to several through the time I was in college to the time when we moved and were married, and my husband was going through medical school. So this was various offices that I had gone to. And I always asked, is there another option besides birth control? And I was always told, birth control, we will use birth control if you're not trying to get pregnant. And we will look into artificial means for you to achieve pregnancy if you are trying to achieve a pregnancy. But we will not go into those options. We'll make you try for a year for a pregnancy before looking into that. So those were my only options. The only time that I heard about the Creighton model and NAPRO technology was through my loving family when we told them that, you know, our doctors, we have gone through a lot of things. I was pushing for tests and labs and things. The nurse in me, I wanted an answer to my problems. So I pushed for them to look into things. I wanted labs. And I remember my OBGYN telling me when I said, what about like polycystic ovarian syndrome? Can you check my hormones and see? And she said, oh, honey, you don't fit the mold for that. And now I know there's so many ways polycystic ovarian syndrome shows up in women. And I hated to be put, you know, we're not cookie cutter women. We are not all the same. I was one of 6 other people on my unit that I was working on as a nurse that were dealing with difficulty conceiving. And
Wow.
we all had very different problems, very different histories, but we were all put on the same path to achieve a pregnancy. The focus was to achieve a pregnancy, not to find out what the problem was. It was to promise pregnancy.
So essentially, were you all being told, well, you got to just, you know, try the old-fashioned way for a year, and if that doesn't work, we'll talk about, you said artificial means. So were they talking about going straight to IVF, in vitro fertilization, or were they talking other methods? Help us understand.
We did. It's a path where they will usually start with Clomid, which is helps you ovulate.
Okay.
And so you usually start with that. They usually will suggest about 6 months of Clomid, but it's not good for you to be on Clomid for a long period of time. It also kind of hyperstimulates the ovaries. So during the time of Clomid, I remember it was very super painful, and it makes your emotions a little crazy. I always laughed, like, they put you on that, and then who wants to be together with a spouse that is nuts? And that's what I felt like. It was nuts.
It's like PMS on steroids?
Sure, absolutely, yes. And just painful because it's trying to produce a whole bunch of eggs at once to give you more of a chance to release one of those eggs in order to achieve a pregnancy. But once I understood this whole other world of observations that women have, I realized that sometimes the Clomid can be a good thing and can help you. But I guess during this time, they don't tell you about your cycles. They don't talk about that there's certain times you need to take those medications. There are certain things that you need to see your body through observations. You need to have your body create cervical mucus, for instance, and that all aids in conception. So medications can be good, and women can use those to help achieve naturally, but those medications have to be given at a certain time in the woman's cycle, and sometimes the woman's cycle is more manipulated than it is supported with the treatments that they provide.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's back up just one step. Could you explain for our listeners what NAPRO is, what the Creighton model is, that sort of thing, what the, in alignment with the Catholic Church, processes and models for conception are, assuming one is having some sort of problem?
Sure. NAPRO technology stands for Natural Procreative Technology, and this is a women's health science that cooperates with the woman's body, and it focuses on root cause problems. So it's important to know that infertility is not a diagnosis, it's a symptom of an underlying problem. And so with NAPRO technology, they focus on root cause and finding that problem and then working to heal that problem, just like we would any other bodily system, our heart health, our GI health, our respiratory health. We look to find the problem and we heal that problem. The biggest thing between NAPRO technology and conventional medicine these days is that we focus on providing health for the woman so that she can, later in the future, if she's a young woman or upon marriage, they can come together as husband and wife and still conceive naturally. And that is the goal. That is what the Catholic Church teaches, is that every act between a husband and wife be unitive and procreative, which means the unity between a husband and wife and the openness to receive children from God when coming together. And so NAPRO technology never gets between the husband and wife coming together and God to conceive that child. They just make the environment more healthy for a couple to be able to do that.
Okay, excellent. And is that synonymous with the Creighton model, or is the Creighton model something different?
So the Creighton model is a form of fertility charting. So that is what the nurse in me loves, the science, and I love all the things that come with NAPRO technology. But my role as a fertility care practitioner is to educate women and couples on what's going on in their cycle. And by cycle, I don't just mean the woman's period. It means the entire cycle. And I sit down with women as young as, teenagers, all the way up through women going through premenopause. And we can learn to observe what our body is showing us to tell us when we are fertile, when we are infertile, if ovulation is happening, and when to expect our periods. So this can be great information for young women to understand, but then also for married couples to use in order to plan their family.
Mm-hmm. So when you speak in terms of, great information for young women, before they're married and trying to have children, obviously it can help with knowing, when the period might come. Mm-hmm. Very helpful. Does it also help identify potential issues that the woman might be experiencing that, she could take some proactive steps towards remedying?
Absolutely. I like how it's all laid out in front of you with your charting so that a woman can really visualize what's actually happening and not just say, oh, yeah, I think this month my period lasted this many days. And maybe I had some heaviness or, instead they are charting what they see every single day of their cycle. Mm-hmm. And it opens their eyes. Things that they didn't realize is all laid out in front of them. And so even young women with heavy bleeding, or painful periods, even women that all of a sudden their cycles went away, maybe because of lack of good nutrition, increased exercise as they're changing their sports from season to season. All of these things, we can get a wealth of information from our entire cycle and day-to-day observations to know what's going on. And then we take that information and we go to a physician or a nurse practitioner that's trained in naprotechnology. They are trained to understand and diagnose based on a woman's charting, and then adding labs to the mix and imaging and all the things that need to happen on the medical side of things to further understand and diagnose and treat that woman.
And when we speak in terms of charting, we probably have listeners that, completely understand what that means, and we may have listeners that have no idea what that means.
Sure.
That is on a daily basis, tracking a variety of things going on in the body.
Correct.
Temperature, cervical mucus, symptoms they might be having. What am I missing?
You're right on. There's a lot more, and depending on the method, it's different. So the Creighton model focuses on cervical mucus, external observations, so what's on their toilet paper. And that is the only observation that the Creighton model pays attention to. That observation by itself can help us determine what our estrogen is doing and what our progesterone is doing. So things like temperature is thrown into the mix with other methods that are out there. There's the symptothermal method, basal body temperature, so they focus on what you're feeling. You can do cervical checks, you can check your temperature. There is a method out now that's called the Marquette method, and they use a device to where they urinate on that and use a machine so that they can get more of an objective number to where their estrogen level is and their hormone levels are. And so, yes, there's a lot of methods out there. So many of them are scientifically backed. The Creighton model has been researched since the 70s and has been studied, and they continue to research this. So they're very scientifically backed. I always encourage whatever method couples look into, that they learn it from an educator and not try to self-teach. I tried to do that at the beginning. It's horrendous. And you often have a lot of questions, and your fertility is changing over time as you age and as you have children and you're postpartum. So what you know as a young woman can be completely different than knowledge you need to have later on. And it's so much more beneficial when you have some support on your side to help you through those times.
So you spoke of several different models. Is it an either or, like choose your model and go with it, or is it encouraged to use, sort of multiple for maximum amount of information?
That's a good question. I of course love the Creighton model. That is what worked for me, but every marriage and every woman is different. And so not every method would be for you, but that's why there are so many options out there. And I do suggest not to pick a little bit from every method, because like I mentioned, the methods monitor different hormones. So your temperature is determining your luteinizing hormone, of which the Creighton model is not focusing on, but other methods do, to indicate when ovulation is happening because of the fluctuations of those hormones. So I do have some clients that try to do a little bit of both, and they're often more stressed than if they just go in the direction of one method and own it. And if it's not working, to be open into looking that there are other methods out there.
That's a good tip. I would not have assumed that. So thank you for sharing that. Listeners, it is your Holy Family Radio Spring Spirit Drive. We are about halfway through Crunch Day, Friday, the final day. We need you to give us a call at 888-287-0655. That's 888-287-0655. I think, Deacon Jeff, do we have phones available, or are they?
Yes, we do. We
Okay.
do have we have plenty of volunteers over there to take that
Excellent.
phone call at 888-287-0655. That's 888-287-0655. And remember, you can use your mobile device, use your cell phone to text us, to text the word give to 419-969-3255. That's 419-969-3255.
So we're talking here, another maybe warning if you just turned on your radio, we're talking about some mature subjects. So if you have little ones, you might want to get them out of earshot if discussing fertility and some of the more technical details of it is not something that you feel your little one is appropriate for your little one to hear. We have, as we've mentioned, we have Wendy M. here with us. She has founded the Divine Grace Fertility Center down in Columbus Grove, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's at my house.
Oh, okay.
But
That's
it's
fine.
Yep.
You provide counseling.
Yes.
There.
I teach, I educate women and couples how to chart. Yes.
Okay.
I'm kind of in the middle of like Kalida, Columbus Grove, Glandorf area. So
Okay. Yeah. Out in the country, like a lot of us are.
You bet.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were sharing with us that, you struggled with fertility issues. You knew you had irregular issues and problems even before you got married, but could never really identify what the problem was. Weren't getting a lot of support from the typical medical community. And then, of course, began to struggle with infertility after you got married.
yes.
So, and you mentioned in passing, so the Creighton model was particularly effective for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you utilized that method, and were you able to have children?
We did. After a couple years of suffering from infertility, we learned about the Creighton model and NAPRO technology. And within the first full month of charting with the Creighton model, we conceived our identical twin girls with no medication, no anything. It was God's divine grace.
Thanks be to God.
Yes.
Yes. Wonderful. So I imagine this journey inspired you to start your counseling and your fertility care.
Absolutely. I remember when I got my pregnancy test, a positive pregnancy test, I remember calling my Creighton practitioner and telling her about it. Now I get to experience those early calls from clients that call me as their first person, sometimes before their husbands, sorry husbands, that about their excitement and their joy for that. And I remember calling her and saying, how do I become a Creighton practitioner? Because I was sold. For the first time, my questions were answered in regards to my health. I still had some hormonal instability, in which NAPRO technology helped me to sustain our pregnancies and to help me with some of the imbalances I had when I was having cycles. So I finally had answers from the medical side. And I also my husband and I found a method that worked for us in order to achieve or avoid or space our pregnancies as well. We never had to stop using this. It's kind of like a lifestyle you choose. And it was finally, it was something totally approved by the church too. So.
Yeah. So in the work that you do in assisting women and walking with them, through this journey, teaching them how to chart, all that sort of thing, do you find a lot of misinformation that women or couples might be suffering from, or do you find that when they come to you, they're pretty doggone educated about that these methods are available, what's in alliance with Catholic Church teaching, what's not in alliance? What's your experience with that?
There is a lot of it's not necessarily misinformation, but just the lack of information that we're given as women. We're never taught how our body works. We're never taught that this is very normal and should be appreciated. You can't really appreciate what you don't understand. And so there's such a lack of appreciation for what the woman's body does and can provide in our world today, that once they hear this, they say, this is what has been missing. This has been missing from my doctor's appointments. This has been missing from my talks with my girlfriends. And so many, including myself, said, why did it take us this long to find this? Where was this? Why wasn't I ever offered this option before? So I love hearing that, because it's just a little miracle every time I sit with somebody new and have these conversations. And I feel so blessed during every one of my appointments, because I get to see all of these little miracles happening for young women, for married women, to see couples coming together in marriage as an engaged couple learning this, of just their eyes being open to the beauty of what the church really wants to provide us couples, that you just had no idea how wonderful it is. It's
Yeah.
hard. I'm not going to say, because everything in life that's worth it is difficult and is a journey. But that's where miracles come from too. And kind of why I chose the name Divine Grace Fertility Care, because you see so much of God's grace and mercy on everyone involved.
So you mentioned some of the clients and some of the experiences you've had with clients, and we're pleased to be able to welcome in studio two of your clients.
Yes.
Correct. So we have with us Carol Schrader as well as Joanne Berkemeyer, who are both clients of your Divine Grace Fertility Care. And so I'd like to ask each of you, why don't we start with Carol, if you're okay? No? Okay, let's start with Joanne.
That's okay. I think the Holy Spirit is telling you to start with me.
All right. Let's start with Carol. Why don't you tell us, tell us the story that you're comfortable sharing with our listeners in terms of your journey on these issues.
Okay. Thank you, Kim. Probably about 10 years ago is when I first learned about NAPRO, and it was on Catholic radio right here shortly after you all got started. And there was no one in our area who was specializing in it. And it was on the back of my mind at that time because, my husband and I have been married for 23 years, and natural family planning has been a part of our marriage for that time. But every time I would go to my doctor's appointments for, when I was pregnant and post-pregnancy, every single time the physician or the nurse practitioner would ask, what is your birth control? And my answer would be a smile and say, natural family planning. And the response was so disheartening because they would always say something like, that doesn't work. It's unreliable. Or, they would give me the spiel that they had learned. And like I said, so disheartening because I would try to argue or state why I'm using it. And there was never getting through to them. Basically, I was left with, good luck then. We'll see you soon. And for a young woman or a mom, young couple, that's not what you want to hear. You want to be encouraged in your path, as part of growing your family. And so we just kept plugging away, and our family grew, and we have 2 adult children and then 2 tween children. And over the course of my life, the reason why NAPRO is something I looked into is I have chronic migraines, and looking, throughout the years, I've been able to look and recognize that my chronic migraines, in addition to being, caused by the typical migraine things, weather or what have you, they follow a pattern. And those migraines that follow a pattern, and when I can identify, I'm always getting a migraine here, and I'm always getting a migraine here. I would take that to my physician, and they would look at it, and they'd say, well, the solution for chronic migraines is the pill. Let's prescribe that. And I would shake my head and say, no. And, at one point I did say, okay, if that's what works. And I couldn't follow through with that. I knew it was not what I would, it was going morally against where I could be. For me, it was so hard, though, each time to stand up for that with the physician. Mm-hmm. And 10 years ago or so, I had heard about NAPRO, and wasn't in our area. And then we started to see some different practitioners be in the area. There was one in Bowling Green before Wendy had started her practice. And so 6.5 years ago, I visited that practitioner in Bowling Green to look into this and to begin. And then when Wendy started her practice, I transferred to Wendy. And meeting with Wendy it's absolutely wonderful. Like, I consider Wendy as a good friend. We go, and the intention is to talk about what my chart looks like, and oh girl, your hormones are out of whack, and she'll just laugh about it, and we'll say, yeah, what do we do about that? But we always get into other conversations, and I know when I'm consulting with her, the conversation, it's Christ-centered, it's Holy Spirit-centered, and it's rooted in the truth. And that's the beautiful part about it, because we might go in talking about or intending to talk about one thing, and then we'll start talking about, one time we were talking about pop checks, and we had a conversation about Dr. Popcheck and a book or what they were saying on the radio. And it's so good to be able to speak to someone on that level who is looking at you as a person, not just a script to pass out, looking at you as a person and helping you identify what you can do to make yourself feel better. And for me, and for anybody who has migraines, it is a constant, even traditional medicine, you're trying lots of things. You're trying lots of preventatives, you're trying lots of the rescue meds, and some work and some don't. And it's no different, with NAPRO. I'm working through some options right now with one of the physicians in Fort Wayne, just trying to see what might work. And that's kind of where I am, and why I'm thankful that I have Wendy as a good friend and as my practitioner.
Well, that's a beautiful story, and I think a great witness to how the technology can be used to help with issues beyond fertility. Yeah. For I imagine a whole variety of issues that can be connected to, where a woman's hormones are at, to better understand that. So thank you for sharing that, Carol. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're listening to Holy Family Radio Spring Spirit Drive. Give us a call, please, 888-287-0655. That's 888-287-0655. And join the Holy Family Radio family. Maybe you're already a member. Well, renew your membership. Let us know you're still there. I think, have we run out of our matching funds?
We have run out of our matching funds. Yes, we have. So,
okay. But that's okay.
It's okay. I'm sure there'll be other opportunities, or maybe there's someone out there who wants to establish some matching funds. Now's the time to call 888-287-0655 and let us know what your intentions are. We'll make sure it happens. We had a couple of donations from Holy Family in New Cleveland come in, and St. Peter and Paul in Ottawa. So we thank you and thank all of those who have donated so far during this Spirit Drive.
Yes, thank you so much. Another reminder, we're speaking about mature topics, so if you have little ones in the listening sphere near your radio signal or your online watching, if you're watching our streaming, you might want to get them out of earshot, because we are discussing some pretty adult topics. We're pleased to also welcome in studio Joanne Berkemeyer. You are also a client of Wendy, correct?
Yes, I am.
So tell us about your journey and how Wendy's care has assisted you through that journey.
So I first heard about NAPRO and charting through a young adult group in Bowling Green studying theology of the body. So I had a really great base foundation on what is theology of the body. That was part of my reversion back to the church as a mid-20-year-old millennial at that point in my life. And met my husband through that group, actually, and he's from Putnam County, so here we are. And we have been married for it'll be 6 years in September. We were able to conceive our oldest within a couple months after getting married. However, my whole life since having my cycle, I had always been violently ill the first day of my period, always calling mom or dad to come pick me up from school. And then once I got into college, my cycle went from like a normal 28, 30-day cycle to months of spread. So, which I thought, this is great. I don't have to buy supplies. I don't have to deal with the complications of this. It doesn't hinder what I want to do. Okay, this is fine. And then I got to a point where I was like, it'd be nice to know when it would happen. So similar to, I think, a lot of women, I consulted my physician, my OBGYN. They said, okay, let's put you on the pill. And at that point, I knew about the pill as far as like, we don't do the pill as far as a form of birth control, but I thought, okay, as a Catholic, it's probably fine for me to use to regulate my cycles. Now I know there are lots of things in the pill and what it does to my body that I do not want in my body. And I think that's part of the reason why, even if you're not married and striving to conceive or avoid, it still is not the best choice. So, and I was also a horrible pill taker that, having to do it every day at the same time every day, I was a mess. So it was a waste of efforts. So it was very short-lived. But circling around and getting back to my marriage, when our daughter was our oldest, a year, we tried to conceive our second. And after about a year of attempting to conceive a second, it was just very frustrating and annoying that this seemed to be so easy for the first and now was such a challenge and hard on both my husband and I. He comes from a large Putnam County family, and it was just very frustrating. We had gotten married. We were both about 30, so we both thought, oh, time is kind of ticking. We really want to have a family that's bigger. So, and praise God, the Holy Spirit, for whatever reason, we ended up going to St. John's to Mass one weekend. We usually would go to St. Anthony, where my husband's family is from, in Columbus Grove, or my home parish in Northwest Ohio was St. Michael the Archangel in Findlay. And Wendy was there and talking about NAPRO technology and Creighton model and NFP. And I thought, you know what? I have to call this lady. So I grabbed the bulletin and her information was in there. And I think it was actually even like a month or two before I was like, I have to call her. It just delayed. And anyways, so the first time that my husband and I both went, because it is important for you and your husband to go to learn. It's nice to have that support from your husband. And he also really enjoyed learning about everything that was actually happening within my body as well, which was really fun. But one of the big things that was very impactful that I just never knew I needed, Wendy gave us some instructions on how to strengthen our prayer life and also gave us a St. Gerard prayer card. And both my husband and I were so touched that, wow, this is healthcare and our faith can be and should be together, that they support each other, that God cares about us, as we know through theology of the body, as a whole person, not just, oh, I care about your heart, I care about your mind, but I don't care about your fertility, or I only care about your fertility in this box. It was whole body, whole soul. And gosh, I wish every practitioner, healthcare professional I ever went to had that sort of knowledge, the faith. And that's also been a beautiful thing for me moving to Putnam County, is there are a lot of Catholic practitioners or healthcare professionals. And it's really a gift, because I don't feel like I face some of the challenges that Wendy's mentioned, that Carol's mentioned, that so many other friends of mine have mentioned in, oh, well, I chart or I use NFP. It's like, oh, okay. And they have a general understanding, and they don't push or pressure. Of course, I wish there was more Catholic physicians in our area, but I do think that's still something I'm so passionate about, that if you are a Catholic healthcare professional and you are listening right now, to really dig in and be bold and be open to support the church, to support what the church teaches, to empower the faithful to live their Catholic faith authentically.
At
So
least, providing those options, letting the clients know, the patients know that these options are out there. You know, you can go explore this over here.
Yes.
Maybe while we're still doing this thing here, or instead of doing this thing here, or just depending on what the issues are. So
Yes.
great. So how long have you been consulting with Wendy, if I may ask?
Be close to 3 years,
to 3 years,
probably late summer. We are expecting baby number 3 in July.
Can I ring the bell for that?
Ring the bell.
So, and it's wild because it took us a year on our own, independently fumbling around, and then a few months due to my lack of attention to detail, shall we say, in charting, to conceive our second. And then the first month that we tried for a third, we conceived, which it was a very shocking and exciting moment because I was not mentally prepared to be able to conceive that early on. But it's been really wonderful to go through the path. And although our journey, I think is shorter to conceive than what many of my friends have had, I think God's grace is there in that. And it's been beautiful working with Wendy because, similar to Carol, we go in and we start talking about my chart, and I ask all of these stupid questions because I don't have a medical background. So I'm always asking her, what does that mean? And she's been able to guide me with working with a couple local people at the time to understand, I need progesterone to help supplement my body and my pregnancy. And other different things. We discovered that I did have some cysts, but so it's a lot of different things that working with Wendy has been really wonderful. And a lot of times we do spend 15 minutes digging into what's happening in my body and chart, and then the rest of it is faith-based. It's wonderful. And we also have, I think, some of the freedom to do that, right? Because I am pregnant. So it's like, okay, well, I'm charting differently than what I would be otherwise. So we can talk about our faith and motherhood. So it's really lovely.
And you can use it to supplement and support and better understand, all kinds of things going on in your body, not just fertility, which is hugely important to many of us, but yeah, it educates you.
Absolutely.
And education is such a great thing. Give us a call. This is the Holy Family Radio Spring Spirit Drive, 888-287-0655. That's 888-287-0655. So if we've heard one theme that at least I'm picking up on from all three of you is that looking into natural procreative issues, looking in whether it's the Creighton model or some other sort of model, looking into these issues would have benefited you earlier in your lives, in your individual journeys, if you had better understood what was going on in your body. And that's really the primary focus of these sorts of models. If I'm correct, please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's to help you better understand what's going on in your body. Maybe it's all completely normal and fine and great, or maybe there's some things that are off and, causes irregular periods or causes migraines or causes any host of the other million things that women can experience because of their hormones. Mm-hmm. Would that be a fair statement?
Absolutely.
Yes, I do want to make mention that it is the Creighton model that is tied to NAPRO technology.
Okay.
So NAPRO technology was built upon the Creighton model. The Creighton model first started in the 70s when birth control became more of an option, and Dr. Thomas Hilgers felt this call from Humanae Vitae to answer the call as a physician and come up with something better. And so after looking at years and years of charting with the Creighton model, because it was standardized and every woman was charting the same way, he was able to figure out so many diagnoses and health issues from that. So all models can help with family planning, but not every model is able to identify the information you need for a physician trained in NAPRO technology to figure out root cause medicine.
Okay.
So that's why that worked for me. It was more medically based in order to, so it is a little bit more intensive than some of the other methods that are out there, because it works with medicine, but not every method can do that as well. if that makes
Understood.
sense.
Yeah. In other words, the things that are tracked in the Creighton model can belie or indicate or point you in some very specific directions to help diagnose problems and whatnot, whereas some of the other methods might not be quite that specific. They might be more focused on sheer fertility.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yes.
That's good to know. That's very good to know. You are listening to Holy Family Radio's Spring Spirit Drive. Give us a call at 888-287-0655. That's 888-287-0655. So we've mentioned Humani Vitae and theology of the body. I'd like to think that most of our listeners know what that is, but Wendy, do you think you could give us just the briefest of a sentence or two as to what those are? If I know it's very difficult to do that, but
I am Pope Paul VI. Am I right on that?
Yeah.
Thank you. My nerves are getting the best of me for my, but he developed Humani Vitae. It was an encyclical that came out in the 1960s. That was the Catholic Church's response to hormonal contraception. When that was created, most organized religions in the 1930s, everybody agreed that natural family planning was the best thing for marriages and for women. But with the creation of the birth control pill, they felt that couples had more freedom, that we didn't need to have so many children, and a lot of the organized religions fell away. The Catholic Church, we are so blessed and to be a part of this faith that stood firm, that still holds firm today, when it is even harder sometimes to stick with this with the culture that we live in, and we all like to have a little bit of control in our lives. But he wrote this encyclical to encourage married couples, to encourage men of science and women of science, and to encourage physicians to stand firm, to do what is best for marriages, for women, for dignity of life. So that's life of the woman, life of the marriage, life of any incoming children.
and society at large as well.
Absolutely. And that's what continues our society is this. And Joanne, I think you do a much better job of explaining theology of the body. I'll let you take that one.
That's fair. Theology of the Body is based off of Wednesday audiences of St. Pope John Paul II, who is just a brilliant advocate for women. And Theology of the Body really teaches us, like, who is man and who is woman? How did God create them? How do they complement each other? And really, there's lots of books and videos. Christopher West is who I learned it through his video sessions, and
Which are excellent.
they're really wonderful.
Yeah.
He's very entertaining too, which is a perk. But there's beautiful teachings out there that and experts on theology of the body. I would really recommend it, and definitely going through Creighton Model with Wendy. I have 2 girls currently, and they will be learning Creighton Model. They will be learning about theology of the body because it's such a countercultural teaching that I think really helped me know who I am as a young woman and how the church loves me and how God loves me. So
That's beautiful. I can tell you that my husband and I have been teaching the current version of Pre-Cana that's in the diocese about. Of course, the name is
Joy-filled marriage.
Joy-Filled Marriage. Thank you. I've only taught it like 10 times and can't remember the name. See, that's why I write everything down. We ask every single time we start, as the presenting couples, every single time we start, who's heard of theology of the body? We get, we typically have 20-some couples 20, 22, I think the max is 26 couples. Always, one or two is the max, one or two couples. Usually just the woman, but, there is just an astounding amount of lack of sheer knowledge that this body of theological teaching exists, let alone what it teaches out there. So, you guys just being here and talking about these kinds of issues, hopefully there's some listeners out there going, oh, I hadn't heard of that either. I'll have to check that out. And there's treatises on it, and there's summaries of it. You can find books out there that will explain it in in a sort of a summary format, in a relatively simple format. And then if that that sparks your interest and you really want to dive deeper into it, you can go the longer route and the more detailed and read St. John Paul II's audiences on this issue, which he gave over the course of several years.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's such a beautiful teaching. So, we would encourage you listeners to check that out. Even if you're past that stage in your life, and by I mean that stage, I simply mean, having children. It's so much broader than that. It's I think you explained it well. It's all about what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman and how we complement each other. And that applies to everybody at every stage. So definitely consider checking that out, listeners. Definitely consider giving us a call at 888-287-0655. That's 888-287-0655. We're mindful that we do have a telephone guest that we'll have to be bringing in a little bit, but we want to give each of you a chance to share. I feel like we've just scratched the surface, like barely even gotten into this, but was there something, that was on your heart that you're like, want to share this with the listeners out there, or anything that I missed that maybe I'm going to just kind of go to each of you. Let's start with Wendy. Anything else that you can share with us?
You're right. We're just scratching the surface. I feel like I could stay here forever and explain, but I just want people to know where you can find help. I pray that more physicians will be open-minded, have a softening heart to the possibility of just getting rid of hormonal contraception in their office and being open to an approach that is for women, for families, for life. So I pray for that. And if you do want to find an OBGYN that is for NAPRO technology, it is their office is Fertility and Midwifery in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Unfortunately, that's the closest we have here. So again, physicians, hear the call, listen. And you can go to their website at fertilityandmidwifery.com to find more information. We also have Caroline Straczynski. She is a women's health nurse practitioner in Bowling Green that is NAPRO trained. She's not able to do surgeries and things invasive, but she understands the Creighton charting in order to diagnose, to do labs, initial testing until they find if you need something more invasive than that. And she's at Falcon Health Center in Bowling Green. She just works on Tuesdays, and you have to ask for her specifically because she is the only one at that center that practices NAPRO technology. And then we have Stephanie Gania, a nurse practitioner in Port Clinton that's NAPRO trained, so in our diocese, and she does virtual and in-person appointments. And so even people from here can do virtual appointments with her as well. If you are ever, if you were looking for a natural family planning method and you're not sure of which one that would work for you and your marriage, if you go to naturalwomanhood.org or fertilityscienceinstitute.org, those are two websites that offer like a quiz. They ask you questions about, well, what are you dealing with? And they kind of direct you to maybe a natural family planning method that would work for you. So I did want to point out NAPRO physicians. And again, this is for any woman, young girls that are just getting their periods to understand what's normal, what's not. So moms out there that don't know what direction to go to, going to an OBGYN who is trained in NAPRO technology is okay, even when they're young. to find out what their next steps could be.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that information. I'm sure there are those out there that were jotting down the information fervently. How about you, Carol? Anything that we missed that you'd just like to add to the discussion?
You know, it would be the beauty of having something that is so in line with what our church teaches. And our church gives us wonderful roadmaps and guidelines, and some people like to think or want to think of them as rules. And the church doesn't give us rules. It gives us a beautiful way that we should live. Our whole goal is to help one another become saints. Wendy does an amazing job of that in her work. She is really just encouraging everyone on that road to sainthood. And that's what we as Catholics, that's what our focus should be. And the NAPRO and the Crichton Method are part of that roadmap. And it's not rules, but it's giving us direction on how we should be thinking and what we should believe in. And then in making the decision is easy because we're going with what is in line with our church teaching.
Thank you. Thank you. And how about you, Joanne? What have I failed to ask that, if you needed to get one last thing in, what would it be?
I would just give a shout out here to any young woman, grandma, mother, sister, friend, that if you or if someone you know who is struggling to conceive or just has irregularities in their cycle, to reach out to Wendy. She's so approachable, genuinely has the biggest heart, and in common healthcare now, it's said, well, wait a year before looking into anything. Well, at that point, you're so emotionally exhausted. There's strains on your marriage, strains on yourself. It's more stress on your body.
You spent a fortune on fertility or on pregnancy tests.
Yes. So just reach out. And I think it's so important. And I just hate seeing people wait and not have real answers and try to fumble around when there's truth and there's help that God has placed Wendy into our local community like a good father does. And he gives those supports, those handouts to help us along in our journey and to help us be saints and live full lives.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. So then how do people get in touch with Wendy if they are interested in further exploring this for any variety of reasons?
I have my phone number is 614-634-1043, so you can call me. My email is divinegracefertilitycare@gmail.com. I have to look at it because, again, it'll be different. divinegracefertilitycare.com or at gmail.com. And I do in-person appointments. I also do virtual appointments. So if somebody in our listening area is farther away, I can still meet with them through Zoom for appointments. So
wonderful, wonderful. Do you have a website or is it basically phone or email?
I do. It's divinegracefertilitycare.my. It's my. .canva, CANVA .site. So divinegracefertilitycare.my.canva.site.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're a society that likes to Google to
You're
find
right. You're
Yes.
right.
find people, find websites,
Yep.
find phone numbers, find all of those sorts of things. Ladies, I can't thank you enough. I mean, I'm going to make my plea to bring you guys back next year if we've got room in the schedule, because and book more time with you, because as you said, we've only scratched the surface of what this is, what this means, how it's in alignment with the church's teachings, how so many other things are not, in this space. Women's cycles and women's fertility and all of that are not necessarily in line with church teaching. There's a lot of people out there that don't know that. And so thank you for taking the time to scratch the surface of those topics with us here today. And hopefully sometime in the future we can dive into that even further with you. Listeners, thank you for supporting Holy Family Radio. We need you to give that call right now, 888-287-0655, and show your support for quality Catholic radio programming throughout Northwest Ohio. It's your station. Holy Family Radio is your station. You can not only listen to it throughout Northwest Ohio, at least 13 counties, and counting, because we're hoping to expand. But you can listen to Holy Family Radio anywhere you go in the world through the Holy Family Radio app.
In fact, I can tell you that we had a number of listeners come in and out during our conversation, including Detroit and Columbus and other places as well. So, there's many ways to reach many people out there with the truth of the Catholic faith and all the services and ministries that are out there that can really help to serve any number of different people and in all different walks of life and stages. So, just please, if you feel so inclined to support us here at Holy Family Radio,
then give us a call, 888-287-0655. Of course, you can always donate online at holyfamilyradio.fm through that app that we just mentioned, the Holy Family Radio app. Or you can receive a direct text that will contain a link to take you to that pledging format, and that is by texting the word GIVE to 419-969-3255. We love to hear from you. We love to hear that phone ring, but we're also very happy to take your pledge via online pledging. That phone number again is 888-287-0655. We're going to take a break right now, and shortly after that break, we are going to welcome on the phone Father Peter Grodi. He is the parochial vicar over at St. Michael's in Findlay. We'll talk to you soon. Stay tuned.